Orochimaru became Hokage? How would the Naruto story change? Would it have a big impact? Would things end up for better, or would they end up for worse? Without further ado, let's get right into it. In order for us to look at what would have happened if Orochimaru became Hokage, we must first look at a few events that occur in the main timeline of the story. After referencing the Naruto data books as well as the Naruto guides, I was able to peg down 2 points in the story in which Orochimaru could have been made Hokage. So what I will do now is present each point and then choose the one I feel is the most likely to occur. The first instance in which Orochimaru could have been Hokage is right after the Third Great Ninja War, when Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, was being pressured to step down as Hokage. As we all know, Minato, or Minato if you go by the English dub pronunciation, was chosen to be Hokage and was picked over Orochimaru. This event occurs 1 year before Naruto was born. The second time Orochimaru could have been made Hokage is when Hiruzen returns as Hokage, after Minato died during the Kyuubi incident. This would have occurred very soon after the village was attacked, since in the Itachi novel and in the Naruto guidebooks, it was made clear that Hiruzen returned as Hokage for the sake of stability. While I do think it's possible that Hiruzen overlooks the darkness and malice that he suspects is inside of Orochimaru, hoping that being responsible for the village would cause the evil inside his heart to leave, I'm not too sure if Hiruzen's feelings and faith in the student would have been enough to overtake Minato's enormous accomplishments in the Third Great Ninja War and his blemish-free record. While Orochimaru did have recognition in the Second Great Ninja War, there was literally nothing said about his feats during the Third War. We don't know if he even took part in the war, which all we know is that during the village in that time, Orochimaru was Anko Sensei. This means that the most likely time for Orochimaru to become Hokage is during Scenario 2, which happens right after Minato becomes Hokage and dies. Make no mistake, if Hiruzen decides to stay in retirement and puts his support behind Orochimaru, this changes a lot for the story. First, even if Danzo had put his name forward to become the next Hokage, it is very likely that the feudal lord would have been more impressed with Orochimaru, since his name is known all across the 5 villages and carries a combination of clout and power needed to be the Hokage. Under this scenario, not only would Orochimaru oversee the reconstruction of the Hidden Leaf Village, but he would also have access to all of the forbidden scrolls of Konoha that only the Hokage had access to. I very strongly believe that Orochimaru's infatuation with ninjutsu would have led to him mastering countless forbidden jutsu, and this very likely includes the reanimation ninjutsu, which he had only partial mastery of in the series. I also believe that Orochimaru would have used his position as Hokage to send promising genin on dangerous missions that would have allowed for them to be captured and eventually experimented on. It's also worth noting that during this time, Orochimaru would have been given access to the same information that Hiruzen had on Shisui Uchiha, and he would have been made aware by Itachi's teachers that they were pushing to have Itachi graduate from the academy early. I don't believe Orochimaru would have attempted to send either of those two on dangerous missions where he could capture and later experiment on them, unless he was able to craft a very well crafted plan. And the reason being is, unlike any of the other children who went missing, Shisui and Itachi were the gems of the Uchiha clan, which means that Fugaku and the police department would have been involved in taking things very seriously. I doubt that he makes a move on either child for any purposes, because he would have access to the second Hokage scrolls. Now, the reason why I say this is we all know that Tobirama was well versed in knowledge about the Uchiha clan, how their Sharingan work, and he did research on them. I believe Orochimaru would have read this information and possibly gone after a less noticeable Uchiha who had awakened the Sharingan. It's very likely that he would have worked with Danzo, with the trade-off being that Danzo got a better implementation of Senju DNA placed inside of him, and maybe even have Orochimaru help him advance his Sharingan even further. Since we do know that he has access to Tobirama scrolls, it remains a possibility that Orochimaru might have discovered how Mangekyo's Sharingan is unlocked and potentially help Danzo unlock it with the Sharingan Eye that Danzo did possess during this time. The disappearance of an Uchiha with no body being found would only further fuel the Uchiha clan's desire to rebel, since a Sharingan is now lost to an unknown person, and given the clan already had distrust towards the village, you can best believe that they would suspect somebody in the village for being behind this. Now, this is where fate ultimately would intervene. I believe that Orochimaru eventually would have been attracting suspicion from Hiruzen, who would have been retired but still kept his eye on the current 5th Hokage, who he had suspected of having darkness in his heart before. With this in mind, I very strongly believe that Hiruzen would have been confronted Orochimaru. If this were to happen, I believe Orochimaru would have either engaged in battle, since he's armed with more powerful ninjutsu, or he would have fled like he did in the manga. Personally, I believe that he would have chose to flee. If he were to kill Hiruzen, there would have been no way the disappearance of a former Hokage could have been kept a secret. It would have raised eyebrows. Now, this is where things get tricky. In the aftermath of all of this, would there be a 6th Hokage named? Even in the main timeline, Orochimaru left the village as the 3rd anniversary of Minato's death was approaching. As we know from Tsunade's conversation with Jiraiya, the sense of protection and stability among the villagers must be taken into consideration when naming a Hokage. In less than 3 years, Hiruzen would have stepped down, the 4th Hokage would have died during the Kyuubi incident, and now the 5th Hokage would have been made a wanted criminal. Is it really a good idea to name a 6th Hokage, who likely would have been Danzo, while Hiruzen would have been under fire for making yet another poor choice, this time choosing Orochimaru as the 5th Hokage? I believe he would have argued that he should be reinstated as Hokage. The reason being is that the villagers are familiar with him as Hokage, which doesn't further upset the balance in the village in regards to the villagers feeling safe and having trust in the Hokage system. I also believe that Hiruzen would view taking back the title as Hokage as being his duty in order to make right for his poor choices. Finally, I believe that the village higher-ups would have made Orochimaru's betrayal classified information, like how they made the truth behind the Uchiha clan massacre classified. Otherwise, if the villagers were to learn that their 5th Hokage was behind the disappearance of children, there might have been a mass flight, since no one would feel safe under these conditions. Very likely, Hiruzen and the elders would construct a story where Orochimaru was taken by the person behind the disappearances, since any other explanation would have raised eyebrows. If they said Orochimaru died fighting the person behind the missing children, even if it was a mutual killing blow resulting in the death of both of them, there would have had to have been a funeral and there wouldn't have been a body for this. We know from the other villages that Kage have gone missing in the past, so it's possible to have the choice where Orochimaru is being abducted, since it would make more sense. Also, Hiruzen being made Hokage would absorb a lot of the fear and unrest that people would have about the security of the village, which leads Danzo to either leak out the truth or bide his time. Now, I personally think Danzo gains nothing from leaking the truth, since a mass exit leaves nothing for him to rule over as Hokage, so it's likely that Danzo bides his time. However, I personally find it funny that Orochimaru's face would be engraved on the Hokage monument, probably with his tongue sticking out, as the 5th Hokage, and Hiruzen would have to forever look up at that face. While it is possible that Orochimaru attempts to return later on, since he would know the weak points of the village and how to bypass the barrier, I believe that Hiruzen would have anticipated this and changed the protection around the village in order to keep Orochimaru out, in particular when it comes to the barrier. It's at this point, even if Orochimaru hadn't joined Akatsuki, I believe he would have done so. Even though he's armed with more forbidden jutsu, I don't believe he would have had to make a move to acquire the Rinnegan by attacking Pain, because there is a large gap in power that exists between himself and Pain. When it comes to the fight with Itachi, which I still believe would happen, since Orochimaru would not only want Itachi's stronger eyes, but as well as his body as well, a small change would occur. Orochimaru would have Sharingan, which would allow him to briefly hold out against Itachi's Genjutsu, but their fight would be over really quickly, especially if Itachi progresses to using the Mangekyo. It's at this point I believe that Itachi would have begun the process of removing Orochimaru's Sharingan. because I believe at some point, likely after having the first eye removed, Orochimaru would have fled. The likely way that this happens is that Orochimaru might have used some type of drugs, the same ones they used on Sasuke during the time skip, in order to increase his strength and stamina. I believe that this is likely since Orochimaru would understand that having a Sharingan implemented into your eye, because you are a non-Uchiha, definitely has a toll on your stamina, and he would know this from his experiments on Danzo as well as from Tobirama's research. From here, nothing would change until Orochimaru returns for the Chunin exams. Now this is where a small change would occur. Anko would immediately recognize her former sensei. After Anko learns the truth about Orochimaru's disappearance from Hiruzen, I don't see much changing, meaning that the third Hokage would make the same decision to further monitor Orochimaru's actions during the Chunin exam, and by the time that the Orochimaru versus Hiruzen Sarutobi fight takes place, there will be a drastic change in the story. When they originally fought, Orochimaru more than held his own against the aged Hiruzen Sarutobi before he was forced to use the reanimation ninjutsu. In this scenario, with the information that he gained from the scrolls in the Hokage Tower, as well as potentially having a decade to master a Sharingan, I see no reason that Orochimaru would not dominate this battle. Between the advantages of the Sharingan and his improved arsenal of ninjutsu, I believe Orochimaru would have either killed Hiruzen or came very, very close to it. If he did have to use the reanimation ninjutsu, Orochimaru would have perfected the jutsu via Tobirama scrolls, which means that the first and second Hokage would have been brought back to full power. There is no way Orochimaru does not kill Hiruzen in this scenario. When it comes to the Reaper Death Seal, Orochimaru likely would have recognized the hand seals that were being weaved, since the Reaper Death Seal is a ninjutsu that is probably kept in the Hokage Tower somewhere. Orochimaru is arrogant, but he's not a fool. Hiruzen would have been killed before the hand seals could have been weaved. In the manga, Hiruzen tells Orochimaru he's using a ninjutsu that he's not familiar with, which causes the legendary Sannin to give pause and gives Sarutobi enough time to use the ninjutsu. In this scenario, Hiruzen would not have that advantage, and Orochimaru would likely kill the third Hokage. Now this is where a major change occurs. Because Orochimaru has full mastery of the Edo Tensei Jutsu at this point, neither Hashirama or Tobirama would be able to break out of the reanimation ninjutsu, which means that he would likely have them attack the Hidden Leaf Village. It's at this point that Kakashi and Guy would move to intervene, but in the battle that ensues between these two versus the Senju brothers, I see no way that Guy and Kakashi can defeat the first and second Hokage. Even if Guy goes 8 gates, between Hashirama's massive power and Tobirama's mastery of the Flying Raijin or the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, there is no reason that these two would end up on top, which means that Guy and Kakashi would end up dead. While the Kages are out destroying the village, I believe a change would occur around the time that Jiraiya arrives. He would have the same options he did in the main story, either to help fight off the invasion or go check on Hiruzen. I believe that Jiraiya still would have continued to fight off panel, since he wouldn't have known how dire the situation with Hiruzen was. By the time the events of chapter 137 unfold, where the original Inoshika-Cho trio show up and the upper level Jonin who were away from the arena help fight off the invasion, Naruto will be in the process of defeating Gar. This is where another change takes place. I find it very hard to believe that someone like Shikaku doesn't already know how to handle the Edo Tensei Shinobi, since he was on the Jonin Council and is respected as the Leaf Village's brightest military mind at this point. I believe that with extremely high difficulty, he would have organized a counterattack that included plans for sealing away the first and second Hokage. It's at this point that Orochimaru would have two options: to stay and fight, since he has the Sound 4, plus he has the usage of his arms, or he could cut bait and run. Though the destruction of the Hidden Leaf Village is within his grasp, I feel Orochimaru would have understood that fighting the combined forces of the Hidden Leaf Village ninja, who either had already taken down his Sound Ninja and the Sand Ninja, or were in the process of doing so, would have chosen to leave the village. However, this brings into question if he goes after Sasuke or not. Given that Orochimaru doesn't know the exact location of Sasuke or his general whereabouts, I find it really difficult to believe he could have tracked him down. Now, with that being said, Orochimaru would have left the task of retrieving Sasuke to the Sound 4. Sometime later, Obito would have Zetsu retrieve his eye from Kakashi's dead body. From here, not much changes. After Itachi and Kisame confront Asuma and Kurenai, Jiraiya would bring back Tsunade to the village to become the 6th Hokage, though there wouldn't be a battle with Orochimaru because he would not have a need to seek out Tsunade. She would then go on to heal Sasuke before she formally became the 6th Hokage. However, the atmosphere in the village would be a lot darker than it was in the main story. There would have been countless deaths. Tons of damage would be done to the village by the reanimated 1st and 2nd Hokage, and people likely would have recognized the former 5th Hokage during the chaos. However, with extremely high difficulty, I believe Tsunade returning could have absorbed a bit of this worry, but not all of it. She might have been a legendary Sannin and the granddaughter of the 1st Hokage, but there would have been a lot of damage done to the village and to the confidence that the villagers had in the Hokage system. I believe that there would have been a large number of people who left the village, but there would have been enough who stayed behind to help rebuild Konoha. From here, not much of the story would change and it would unfold almost the same. Yamato would likely be asked to lead Team 7 earlier, and another Jonin would be asked to lead Team Guy. Instead of Kakashi saving Sakura from Naruto and Sasuke's jutsu clash on top of the hospital roof, it will be Yamato. I also believe that Yamato would have been able to track down Naruto in a similar fashion as Kakashi did, arriving just after his final valley battle with Sasuke. Where a big change occurs is Sasuke's killing Orochimaru. Now, Orochimaru would have been more powerful than he was in the main story, but the drawback to the jutsu that he uses to switch bodies is that eventually the body becomes weak enough for Orochimaru to be killed. Sasuke would still kill Orochimaru, though it would have been with a tad more difficulty. At this point, after killing Orochimaru, I believe that Sasuke would have taken the remaining Sharingan eye from Orochimaru. I say this because Sasuke does have pride in his clan. In regards to Sasuke, I believe that he would have been even more skilled with the Sharingan because he would have been taught by Orochimaru, who would have extensive knowledge of how the Sharingan works from the 2nd Hokage scrolls. On top of that, Sasuke would likely have even more ninjutsu than he did in the main story. Is it really that far-fetched to believe that if Orochimaru taught Anko forbidden ninjutsu, that he wouldn't have done the same thing to Sasuke? At this point, with Orochimaru gone, the story would progress as normal. The major changes that would occur would be during Naruto's change in chakra nature training. Since it was Kakashi's idea to train Naruto in this manner, I don't see Naruto learning wind chakra change in nature because he was taught by Kakashi, and Kakashi thought to use the shadow clones to speed the process up. No Kakashi means that Team 10 likely dies when they go take on the immortal duo of Hidan and Kakuzu. Later on during the Pain Invasion, no Kakashi means that Iruka would die. Now comes Sasuke. Though Sasuke would be more skilled with the Sharingan and have more jutsu at his disposal, I don't see it having much of an impact on his battles with Itachi, with Killer Bee, or during his first attack on the 5 Kage. However, I do see a change occurring when he takes on Danzo. Orochimaru would have made better use of the Senju DNA that Danzo possessed, giving him better control over it and potentially allowing him to voluntarily use some form of wood release. However, Sasuke would also be more skilled than he was in the main story, so the two advantages that both of these two have would be equaled out. Though I believe that in this scenario, Sasuke would have to work a little harder in order to defeat Danzo. The battle between Guy and Kisame would be different in that Guy wouldn't be there to stop him, which means that there would have needed to be a combination attack between Naruto and Bee in order to defeat him. By the time the 4th Great Ninja War begins, Orochimaru's influence would have definitely been felt by the reanimated shinobi when it comes to the war. Kabuto would have access to all of Orochimaru's findings, including a fully mastered form of Edo Tensei with the potential of using the 1st and 2nd Hokage if they weren't sealed away using the Reaper Death Seal, which means that the army would have been substantially more powerful than they were in before. With Kabuto in full control of the Edos, I see no reason why more ninja would have been slaughtered, especially since Kabuto would have an Edo Tensei of the first and second Hokage, as well as Kakashi and Guy at his disposal. Though I do see Kabuto allowing some of the reanimated shinobi to keep their personalities, since he did admit that it gave him a psychological advantage on the battlefield. This becomes especially true when it comes to the Konoha shinobi having to fight against Kakashi, Guy, and the new generation of Ino Shikacho being Choji, Ino, and Shikamaru. It's also worth noting that the battle with the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist would have turned out a lot differently. Kakashi wouldn't have been there to handle a bulk of the fighting against Zabuza, nor would Guy be there to back him up. So in this scenario, you have Ino, Sai, and Lee there to take on the 7 ninja swordsmen. Two things could happen from here. Lee could open up the 5th gate, and it might be enough to hold them off long enough to wait for the sealing team to come, or Sakura would have to undo her seal and enter into the battlefield. Personally, I don't see any way Sakura doesn't open up the seal, because I don't see Lee being powerful enough to do what is required to hold off all 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Now brace yourselves. In the manga, Kakashi went into a full rage mode that wiped out the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, but it happened off panel. In this scenario, Sakura would be the one going into a rage, unleashing her monster strength upon the 7 ninja swordsmen. If Sakura was able to take down a Jubi spawn, then I definitely believe that she would have been able to handle the Edo Tensei shinobi long enough for them to be sealed. When it comes to Itachi and Nagato, both of them being at full power results in a huge problem for Naruto and B. During their initial fight, Itachi and Nagato proved to be a force to be reckoned with, and they weren't even at full power. However, the moment Itachi releases himself from the Edo Tensei, Nagato would be defeated in the same manner. However, Naruto's battles with the legendary shinobi, like the former Raikage, would have been a lot different, especially given the fact he doesn't know the Rasen Shuriken, since most of his battles would require him to expend more chakra to take them down. Also, Madara Uchiha would be an absolute monster to deal with. Madara would be brought back at full power, which includes the Rinnegan. We saw a fully powered Madara demolish the tailed beast and Naruto and Sasuke and the former Hokages in battle, so that leads me to believe that even more ninja would have fallen against Madara when he attacks them in episode 322. By the time the 5 Kage arrived, I believe that Madara would still have defeated them, though this time it would have been with much more ease. When Itachi defeats Kabuto, Madara would have reversed the Edo Tensei since he knew the seals. The death of Kakashi and Guy do get noticed in the battle with Kakashi Obito. B and Naruto were bailed out more than a few times in the battle with Obito, especially when it came to the battle with the Jinchuriki and their 4-on-1 battle with Obito. Now, if we go under the assumption that Obito wouldn't use the Rinnegan to control the dead Jinchuriki, instead opting to use his natural eyes, then we would still reach the same conclusion, since Obito would still have Naruto and B on the edge, given how hacked the Kamui ability is. No Kakashi means that there isn't anyone left to figure out Obito's weakness about the Kamui, which means that he would never be unmasked. Since there is a very strong chance of Naruto and B being captured, perhaps both, given the fact that Kakashi and Guy provided a pivotal role in keeping that from happening, if this isn't the case, then eventually Madara would show up just as he did in the main story. Without Kakashi being there to fight Obito, I feel it is very, very likely that Obito brings down B, who was already running low on chakra. The likely scenario is that B gets his chakra restricted like he did in the main story and then gets sealed away because Naruto would be preoccupied fighting a much more powerful Madara Uchiha, which means that B would die after the extraction. This is where the story gets really tricky. Naruto would have to fight a fully powered Edo Tensei Madara Uchiha and Obito with both of his eyes, or Obito with another Rinnegan, who wouldn't have the weaknesses exposed. While Naruto is a great deal stronger than B, I don't see Naruto holding off the two of them alone long enough for the Shinobi Alliance to show up. Even if someone in headquarters is monitoring the situation and lets them know, I don't see anyone in the alliance being strong enough to make up for the difference in power, and I don't see any of them reaching Naruto in time to save him. While I know some of you may point to Minato's portion of the Kyuubi alerting Minato, this would not happen. If Naruto falls in battle before the alliance reaches him, then Sasuke would not have revived the Hokages at this point, because that means that the Kyuubi that Minato possessed wouldn't be a factor. The alliance doesn't show up until chapter 612, and Sasuke does not revive the Hokages until the end of chapter 618. Unfortunately, this would mean that Naruto would fall in battle before the alliance comes, since a full-powered Madara Uchiha and Obito would be too much for him to overcome alone. This would mean that Naruto would have the Kyuubi extracted from his body, which would cause Madara and Zetsu to betray Obito, thus bringing Madara back to life via the Rinne Rebirth Jutsu. Madara would then go on to activate the Infinite Tsukiyomi before the alliance arrives. By extension, Sasuke and Orochimaru and Team Taka would be caught in the Genjutsu as well, with the most likely scenario being they're caught in the Genjutsu just as they arrive in Konoha, around the time that they originally sensed Naruto's chakra in the manga. Hagoromo likely wouldn't appear before Naruto, since he would be missing chakra from the 1 and 8 tails, as well as the other half of the Kyuubi. The same holds true for Sasuke, since Sasuke wouldn't have met all the requirements to awaken the Rinnegan. This would mean that Madara Uchiha would eventually be betrayed by Zetsu, who would then go on to revive Kaguya, and this would leave Kaguya in complete control of the earth. Well guys, that's been it for my video for today. So as you guys can see, Orochimaru being made Hokage would have resulted in a drastically different story. I can't wait to read your comments. I know some of you guys aren't going to agree with this. I know some of you guys will. Be on the lookout for my next what if, which is what if Team Guy helped fight pain. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Have an awesome day, guys.